July 11, 2019, Florence, Colorado. A convoy moves through the high desert toward one of the most secure prisons in the United States. Inside is Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The drug lord has already escaped prison twice. The first time, authorities said he disappeared inside a laundry cart. The second time was even more unbelievable. A tunnel nearly a mile long had been dug directly beneath his prison cell. It contained lighting, ventilation, and even a motorcycle mounted on rails. When guards realized he was gone, El Chapo was already free. Again. Now America faces a problem. How do you imprison a man who has already escaped maximum security prisons? How do you stop someone whose organization can buy information, move millions of dollars, and spend months digging through solid ground without being detected? The answer stands in the Colorado desert. ADX Florence, a prison built for inmates every other prison failed to hold. Terrorists, spies, gang leaders, murderers, escape artists, men with money, men with followers, men with nothing left to lose. And in more than 30 years, not one of them has escaped. Not a single one. That record isn't luck. It isn't just armed guards or razor wire. It's the result of a prison designed around a terrifying idea. What if you could remove every ingredient an escape needs before the escape even begins? And once you understand how ADX Florence was built, you begin to realize something unsettling. The prison wasn't designed to stop escapes. It was designed to make them impossible. The turning point. October 22nd, 1983. Marion, Illinois. At the time, Marion Federal Penitentiary was considered the toughest prison in America. It housed some of the most violent inmates in the federal system, men already living under extreme security measures. Yet on that morning, something happened that would permanently change how the government thought about prison security. An inmate named Thomas Silverstein was being escorted through the facility in handcuffs. 3 correctional officers surrounded him. He was restrained, controlled, and watched. By every normal standard, there should have been no danger. Then something went wrong. Silverstein managed to free himself from his restraints using a smuggled key. He obtained a homemade knife and attacked Officer Merle Klutz. The officer was killed inside what was supposed to be one of the most secure environments in the country. Hours later, another inmate, Clayton Fountain, carried out a nearly identical attack against Officer Robert Hoffman. 2 officers died, one day, inside the prison that was supposed to be the safest in America. For the Bureau of Prisons, the message was impossible to ignore. The problem wasn't simply the walls, it wasn't the fences, it wasn't even the cells. The danger appeared whenever violent inmates came into contact with other people. Every escort created a risk. Every movement created an opportunity. Every interaction opened a door. Marion entered permanent lockdown, and prison officials began studying a radical idea. Instead of relying on more guards, more patrols, and more supervision, what if a prison could be designed to eliminate opportunities altogether? That question became a blueprint. And that blueprint eventually became ADX Florence, backwards built. Most prisons begin with a simple objective: keep prisoners inside. ADX Florence began with a different question: how do prisoners escape? The planners studied decades of prison breaks, assaults, riots, and security failures. Again and again, these same ingredients appeared. Successful escapes required information, communication, tools, movement, and opportunity. Remove those ingredients, and the escape becomes dramatically harder. Remove all of them, and something extraordinary happens. The escape stops before it starts. That philosophy shaped every part of ADX Florence. The prison sits in an isolated stretch of Colorado desert. The location itself creates distance. Then comes the layers of security: multiple fences, motion detectors, cameras, armed patrols, and electronic monitoring systems. But the most important security feature isn't visible from outside. It's the architecture. The building was designed so prisoners learn as little as possible about the facility around them. Movement is tightly controlled, routes are limited, access is restricted. Every section of the prison is divided into controlled spaces that prevent inmates from understanding the complete layout. In a normal prison, a prisoner gradually learns the environment. At ADX, many never do. Because the goal isn't simply confinement, the goal is uncertainty. A prisoner who doesn't understand the building cannot easily plan a route through it, and that was exactly the point. Hidden cell. The first problem an escape planner needs to solve is simple: understand where you are. You need to know where your cell is located, which direction leads outside, where the guards move, how long a corridor is, and which barriers stand between you and freedom. ADX Florence attacks that problem before the prisoner can even begin planning. The cells are designed to provide extremely limited views of the world beyond them. Instead of looking across a normal prison yard and gradually learning the shape of the facility, a prisoner sees only a narrow portion of the outside environment. There are no useful landmarks revealing where the cell sits inside the complex. No broad view of the surrounding landscape. No easy way to study the prison from above ground. Imagine spending years inside a building while never developing a reliable mental map of it. You might know your cell perfectly, but that doesn't mean you understand the prison. Then look at what is actually inside the cell. The furniture is deliberately limited, with many features fixed in place and constructed from materials that are extremely difficult to dismantle. The bed isn't something you can simply move across the room. The desk isn't an ordinary piece of furniture. Even basic facilities are incorporated into the cell. The shower is inside. Meals can be delivered through the door. Recreation can happen separately from other prisoners. Every ordinary activity has been redesigned to require as little uncontrolled movement as possible. And that creates the first major obstacle for an escape. Before you can break out of a prison, you need to understand the prison. At ADX, even that knowledge is difficult to obtain. Endless doors. Now imagine you've somehow managed to leave the cell. In an ordinary prison, that could be the moment an escape truly begins. You reach a corridor, find a weakness, overpower a guard, or simply move faster than the people trying to stop you. But ADX Florence is designed to prevent that chain reaction from ever developing. Movement through the facility is divided into controlled stages, with layers of doors separating one area from another. A prisoner doesn't simply walk from a cell into an open hallway and continue toward the outside. Instead, one controlled space leads to another, and each transition creates another security checkpoint. Even if someone managed to defeat one barrier, another would still be waiting ahead. That changes the mathematics of escape completely. An escape requires momentum. The longer someone remains in motion, the more opportunities they have to exploit confusion. ADX attacks that momentum by constantly forcing movement through controlled boundaries. Then come the layers beyond the building itself. Cameras monitor areas of the facility. Detection systems can identify movement. Fences and razor wire create additional physical barriers. Armed personnel and other security measures protect the perimeter. But the real strength isn't any single defense. It's the fact that the defenses overlap. If one layer fails, another remains. If a prisoner gets through one door, another barrier separates him from the next area. If he somehow reaches an exterior section, the perimeter is still between him and the surrounding landscape. And this is the central idea behind ADX Florence. It doesn't depend on one perfect security measure. It creates so many separate problems that defeating the first one doesn't bring you any closer to freedom. You simply arrive at another door, and then another, and another. System testers. ADX Florence wasn't built for ordinary prisoners. It was built for men who had already demonstrated that ordinary security measures weren't enough. Some had escaped before. Others had powerful organizations behind them, enormous financial resources, loyal followers, or the ability to influence people from inside prison walls. And that is what makes the facility's record so remarkable. Its security wasn't tested by people who simply wanted to get out. It was tested by people who had already proven they could exploit prisons. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman is perhaps the most famous example. Before entering the American federal system, Guzman had escaped Mexican custody twice. His second escape involved a sophisticated underground tunnel that reached directly toward his prison cell. The operation required months of preparation, outside assistance, specialized equipment, and precise information about the facility. It worked because the people helping him had access to the one thing every escape needs: knowledge. They knew where he was, where the tunnel needed to go, and how to get him through it. ADX was designed to remove exactly that advantage. But Guzman wasn't the only dangerous prisoner sent there. The facility has housed terrorists, spies, organized crime figures, gang leaders, and violent offenders whose histories made them difficult to contain elsewhere. Some had escaped custody before. Others had continued directing criminal activity while incarcerated. The prison therefore wasn't designed around the assumption that its prisoners would eventually cooperate. It was designed around the opposite assumption. These were people who would search for weaknesses, they would test boundaries, they would look for patterns, and they would wait for opportunities. ADX was built knowing that. The question was whether its walls could stop them. But eventually, the prison discovered that walls weren't the only thing that needed to be controlled. Ghost escape. ADX Florence was designed to stop people from getting out. But one of its most important security lessons came from something that couldn't be physically locked inside a cell. Information. In the late 1990s, Aryan Brotherhood leaders Barry Mills and Tyler Bingham were held at ADX while maintaining connections to members of the organization outside. Their movements were restricted, their communications were monitored, and their access to other prisoners was heavily controlled. Yet, according to evidence presented in later court proceedings, information connected to Bingham reached gang members in another federal prison hundreds of miles away. The method was surprisingly simple compared with the technology surrounding ADX. Messages could be concealed inside ordinary correspondence, using methods designed to hide their real meaning from someone screening the letters. In one case, investigators learned that invisible writing had been used to transmit an order that eventually contributed to violence inside another prison. Suddenly, the problem had changed. ADX could prevent a prisoner from physically reaching another facility, but it couldn't automatically prevent his words from traveling there. A letter could cross distances that a prisoner could not. An idea could pass through a security system that a person couldn't. And that exposed a weakness in the original concept. Physical isolation wasn't the same thing as complete isolation. The Bureau of Prisons responded by increasing restrictions around communication for certain high-risk prisoners. Under special administrative measures, some inmates can face exceptionally strict controls on correspondence, visits, and other forms of outside contact. The lesson was brutal, but important. Escape doesn't always mean climbing a fence or digging a tunnel. Sometimes the thing escaping is influence, and if a prisoner can still direct people beyond the walls, then part of his power remains outside the prison. ADX had been designed to control bodies. Now it had to learn how to control information too. Security cost. For more than 3 decades, ADX Florence has maintained a remarkable record. No prisoner has escaped by breaking through its security system, but that achievement comes with a question that is far more complicated than whether the walls can hold someone. What happens when a prison becomes so effective at controlling movement, communication, and human contact that the environment itself becomes the punishment? At ADX, security is built around removing opportunities. Fewer movements mean fewer chances for violence. Fewer interactions mean fewer chances to coordinate with other prisoners. Restricted communication makes it harder to influence people outside. Even the simplest parts of daily life are structured around minimizing uncertainty. From a security perspective, the system is remarkably logical, but human beings are not machines designed to operate without meaningful contact. Years of extreme isolation can create psychological and emotional consequences, and ADX has faced criticism, lawsuits, and continuing debate over how long such conditions should be imposed. That creates the central contradiction at the heart of the facility. The same architecture that protects officers and prevents dangerous prisoners from controlling other people can also isolate those prisoners from almost every ordinary form of human interaction. A concrete wall can stop an attack, but it can also stop a conversation. A locked door can prevent violence, but it can also separate a person from another human being. ADX was engineered to make escape almost impossible, yet its most unsettling feature may be that the prison does not need to physically defeat a prisoner every day. The environment is already doing that work. And after 30 years, that may be the strongest evidence of how completely the system was designed to control the people inside it. From the outside, ADX Florence doesn't look like a machine designed to defeat escape. It looks like a collection of buildings surrounded by fences in the Colorado landscape. But its real security system is much deeper. The prisoner has limited knowledge of the facility. Movement is controlled. Objects are restricted. Doors separate one space from another. Communication can be heavily monitored. Even the view outside the cell reveals almost nothing about the world beyond it. Every weakness that once helped someone escape somewhere else became a lesson. A smuggled key became tighter control. A tunnel became restricted movement and limited knowledge. A dangerous letter became stricter communication rules. And every lesson was built into the next layer of the system. That's why the most interesting thing about ADX Florence isn't its walls. It's the philosophy behind them. Don't simply make escape difficult. Remove the conditions that make escape possible. More than 30 years later, that experiment continues. And so far, no one has beaten it.